The 25th, 1991, and our guest is Robert Miller. All right, Mr. Miller, where do you live today?
Florida, New York.
All right, how long have you lived there?
Oh, 10 years.
Right. And we're going to be going into later that you were in the 82nd Airborne during World War II.
Right.
All right. Where were you born?
New York City.
All right, and you'll have to tell us the year if you would.
1923.
1923. All right. And your parents' name?
John Miller and Henrietta Miller.
All right. And where were they born? If you
in the United States.
In the United States. Did you know your grandparents?
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about them, if you would?
Well, both my grandfathers were rabbis. They both died. Both my grandfathers died. One died in the latter part of 1938, 37. My maternal grandfather died right after Pearl Harbor, because I remember having fun with him one day and saying, you know, we're at war, and that when we came home that night, we heard that the Japs had attacked Pearl Harbor.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe you had a little premonition there.
Well, it was awful close. You knew it was. It was kind.
Is it unusual to have two grandfathers as rabbis?
Well, it's not that it's unusual. They were both Orthodox, and I guess that's the way it wound up. You know, my mother, when she met my father's name was John, and on the first date, my youngest uncle ran home and told my grandfather that she was going with a goy.
And the goy is?
Christian.
Christian.
Because my father's first name was John. And he couldn't believe that a Jewish man was named John.
The language spoken at home?
English.
Any Yiddish at all, or?
My grandmothers both spoke Yiddish. Both my grandfathers spoke English.
Right.
One of them was born in this country.
And you were able to pick up, I assume, some Yiddish,
yeah,
some phrases,
certain phrases and maxims.
So on. Right.
As a matter of fact, I was able to talk Yiddish as a child, but over the years, not using it.
How often that happens in America?
That's right.
That it's lost. And what did your father do for a living?
Oh, he was a jack of all trades. Let's see, when I was a kid, he drove a truck more or less, and then went into the gasoline station business. And then when I went into the service, of course, you couldn't exist being in the gasoline business because of rationing.
Mm-hmm.
So he went back into trucking and delivered wines and whiskeys right up until I came out almost, and then went back into the gasoline station business. And then in the middle 50s went into a luncheonette business in New York City.
And your mother, would we call her a homemaker?
My mother was a homemaker, except during the war years she worked for the post office in the United Parcel building.
As many women did get into the war effort.
Yeah.
What's the oldest person you can kind of recall as a child? You remember the name or maybe how old they were?
Well, my grandfather Max died. He was 81.
And how old were you when he died, roughly? Roughly.
17, 16.
All right, but you had known him.
Oh, yeah.
And when did he die?
1942.
1942. Okay, so he really goes back into the preceding
oh, yeah,
century.
well, my father was born in 1898. My mother was born in 1900. I have an aunt that's still alive on my father's side who's 98 years old now.
So you come from a family of reasonably
seems like it, yeah.
Good people, right. What school, what's the elementary school did you attend?
I went to PS 36 in New York. And
now where would that be?
9th Street between Avenue C and Avenue D.
Is that still down there, do you know?
I don't know.
Well, you know, because some of them have vanished to exist, and others, of course, long gone.
The junior high school I went to was 64. My father went to that school, had the same teacher that I had for typing, he had for math.
All right. Then, when did you graduate from high school?
I never graduated from high
Okay.
school.
All right, when did you leave then?
I left high school in 1939.
Did the Depression hit you right between the eyes?
Yeah, I had to go to work.
All right. And let's start off from there. What was your first job?
My first job was in 1936 in the summertime in a gas station for $1.50 an hour, a day,
Yeah.
for 12 hours. Almost made
Was
a
this
mistake.
pumping gas?
Just pumping gas, checking oil.
1936?
Yeah.
Did you have to wear a white uniform?
No.
No? All right. So many of these people.
Gray coveralls.
Great coverall.
Yeah.
And how much was gas a gallon in 1936?
12 cents, 13 cents,
And specials would even be.
a penny more.
Right. Okay, I wanted to ask, as the childhood, there were many people looking for these jobs, and you were, I guess, we could call it fortunate to have that job. All right. And did you live at home for
Yes.
for a length of time?
I lived at home up until I went into the service.
Did you go to the New York World's Fair?
Oh yeah, I worked at the World's Fair
Well,
in
tell us.
1940.
All
I
right.
worked at Billy Rose's Aquacade.
All right, and you must have seen Esther.
Eleanor Home.
Oh, well, go ahead. Eleanor Home was
Eleanor Home and Buster Crabbe.
All right, well, help us out. Eleanor Home was.
Billy Rose's ex-wife.
Okay, but she wasn't the.
She was a swimming star.
Well, she was. I had forgotten that.
She was a swimming
I was thinking, who was the other one that came along? Esther Williams.
Well, that was
That was much later.
much later.
Okay, that's right. Billy Rose. Oh
Yeah.
gosh, that was quite a thing.
It was it really was a beautiful show, and you had to see it to believe it.
All right, Mr. Miller, what were? Of course, you're a young boy at the time, you know. Or a young man, really. What did you do?
I sold peanuts, candy, popcorn, and it was strictly commission.
Oh, it was strictly commission.
Yeah, it was 15 cents on a dollar
All right.
is what the commission was. But considering the times, I made a lot of money those 2 years. I think I averaged about $45 or $50 a week, which was a lot of money.
That was a lot of money, because I know a good income at this time was $25 a week.
That's
and
right.
That was a
That was
decent
excellent.
income. That was good income.
A police officer made $30 a week in those years.
So as a young man, you were kind of raking it in there for a time.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to those days.
In proportion, of course. The General Motors exhibit of the future, and I'm not saying it correctly, but that impressed everyone. At
Yeah.
least it seemed. Did that impress you?
Very much so. I said that, by God, I'd like to get one of the first cars that I could, with the fins and everything else.
What was your first car?
In 1939, I bought a 1931 Model A Ford for $15.
Were you mechanically
Yeah.
inclined? I assumed you were.
I went to the high school that I went to was the Brooklyn High School of Automotive Trades.
Oh, all right.
So
So you kept it running.
I kept it running. I ran for 4 years until I loaned it to my cousin to go on his prom, and the car never ran after that.
You think you got your $15 worth out of it?
I junked it when I brought it back home, and I got $12 for it in junk. So
So you did quite
it wasn't a
well.
loss. You didn't have insurance in those days.
But the Model T has such a good reputation, and I guess would you say that
Oh yeah,
that this proves, I mean, for you personally,
you bought all the parts you needed in Woolworths. It didn't have ignition wires. It had copper leads running from the spark plugs to the distributor. Didn't have a fuel pump because it was gravity flow from the front underneath the windshield. It was the gas tank. So it just flowed
Now,
right
the
into the
windshield wipers, were they mechanical or were they electric?
No, they were pneumatic. They worked off the manifold.
Off the press, right. But it sounds like you could have had, as a young man, had a lot of fun with that.
Oh yeah, it had a rumble seat.
Oh, it did?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, all the young men loved rumble seats.
That's right.
All right. Now, during the time that you were at the World's Fair, besides Billy Rose, what kind of a person was Billy Rose anyway? I mean, here you
You
are.
never saw him.
Oh.
Very seldom that you saw him. The general manager of the show, I'm just trying to remember his name. It's so many years
yeah,
now.
Oh, yeah.
But he ran the whole operation there, and of course, being a candy butcher, that's what they called us. I worked for Handsome and, God, I can't think of the second name.
Well,
But I have a cousin, well, my father's cousin, who's still alive, who was the foreman of all the candy butchers, who's done that all his life.
at fairs or things like
At
that.
fairs, Madison Square Garden,
Yeah, things
Yankee
like that.
Stadium, all of that.
What other famous people did you see, or just catch out of the corner of your eye? Were there anybody who came through that you happened to,
Well, you saw a lot of military officers came through. The president came, the vice president
Oh,
came on
you
different
did see
occasions. Yeah.
Franklin D. Roosevelt?
Oh yeah. And
I'm sorry.
the governor,
The government. Well,
Lehman.
let's spend a moment on the president.
Okay.
Did you happen to, you're busy selling, and so on and so forth, of course. Did you get reasonably close to see him?
No, you couldn't get that close.
Okay.
Secret Service had it all zeroed out, where I guess they kept 10 rows behind them, 10 rows on the side.
So you had
That was it.
Did you ever see LaGuardia?
Oh yeah. Fiorello, the little flower.
Well, of course, he's one of my favorite, and you can get into a discussion whether he was good or bad. I know there's very controversial.
I remember as a kid, the newspapers were on strike, and he read the comics to us on Sunday for a couple of weeks on the radio.
Right. The man who was kind of conducting this for the city, I'm trying to think of what
Grover Whalen.
Thank you. Did you see him, or did?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
He was an ex-police commissioner of New York.
Oh, he was.
Yeah.
And he seemed very energetic.
He was a dapper Dan.
He was a dapper Dan.
Yeah, he wore spats and striped trousers. It was amazing. And a Hamburg hat.
All right. Now, you may have been too young for this, but I'm thinking of the predecessor of LaGuardia, Walker. What was his name? I can't.
Jimmy Walker.
Jimmy, did you ever get a chance to see him, or a little bit earlier? A little bit
A
earlier.
little bit too early.
All right. Now, did you work at the fair till it finally closed down?
Yeah.
Was that, I get kind of the impression, or maybe I really need your thoughts on this, but the 1940 World's Fair was quite different from the 39 in the thing of atmosphere because of the war. Already breaking out in Europe in 39.
Well, it wasn't that it was so much different than atmosphere. They put more rides in to make more money. That's what they did do.
Right. Now, you're a young man, and politics is perhaps not the thing of great importance to a young man. But the Polish pavilion closed, and did that mean anything to you at the time as a young person, which is,
No. Didn't even faze me.
The war clouds were, but again,
Yeah.
most Americans just, I guess Bob, can I say, wasn't quite that close to people yet.
It wasn't that. It was just the idea that we weren't ready at that point, because the draft, when they instituted it in 1940, they didn't even have, they gave them broomsticks for guns.
Down in Fort Dix, I
That's
believe.
right, and they had plywood panels for tanks and trucks.
And they were drafted for a year in peacetime.
Yeah, that's what they were supposed to be for
And
a year.
those poor fellows stayed in for the full,
The full length.
full length. Now, 1939, now how old were you in 39?
16.
16. Did you ever for a moment think, as the war clouds got more and more and Europe really went through it, did someday you'd be in the service?
No.
No, I mean, you just went on your...
That's right, I went on my happy way.
With most
That's
Americans did.
All we thought about was girls.
Well,
That
for a
was it.
16-year-old boy,
Yeah.
I guess that's a very healthy thing. Now, we're going to go into that, but let's go into your marriage for a moment, then when did you get married, though?
Well, I'm in my second marriage
Oh,
now.
okay.
My first marriage was September 1948,
So this is after World War II.
after World War II.
And your second marriage was?
I married 10 years.
Right, okay. And you have a family?
Yes, I have 2 sons with my first marriage, and a stepson and a stepdaughter, and 3 grandchildren with my second marriage.
So you have quite a large family then.
Yeah.
It really is. All right, now, finally the day is coming, and Pearl Harbor, do you remember anything about Pearl Harbor?
Oh yeah.
If you would. Where were you?
Well, we were in a car. We'd been coming home from my grandfather, where I kiddingly said we were at war with the Japanese, never realizing at the time that I said it that something like this could happen. I just said it to shake him up more or less,
Right.
because he was a peace activist in those days.
And there really was a great movement in this country for to remain neutral.
That's
on
right.
this. I mean, it was,
Yeah.
and by very honest,